Book of Heaven, Volume 28, Part 6, July 16th, 1930. The Divine Will, Life, Love, Nourishment. How one act alone does not form life, nor complete act. Necessity of the repetition of the acts, in order to form the life of the Divine Will. My abandonment in the Divine Fiat continues. Oh, yes, I feel it, like air, letting itself be breathed by my poor soul. I feel its most pure light, that keeps repressed the darkness of the night of my human will, such that, as it is about to rise, to put itself in the field of action, the light of the Divine Will, sweetly ruling over mine, not only represses the darkness, so as not to give it life, but powerfully calls me and draws me to follow its acts. So, while following its divine acts, I could touch with my own hand how much it loves us, because in each of its acts seas of love came out for the creatures. And my always lovable Jesus, showing his heart invested by ardent flames for love of creatures, told me, "My daughter, my love toward creatures is so great that it does not cease to love them for one single instant. If I cease to love them for one instant alone, the whole machine of the universe and all creatures would resolve into nothing, because the existence of all things had the first act of life from my love, full, whole, complete, interminable, and incessant. And so that my love might have all its fullness, I released from myself, as act of life of the whole universe and of each act of creature, my divine will. So my life is love of everything. My love is continuous nourishment of all creation. Life without nourishment cannot live. Nourishment, if it does not find the life, has no one to whom to give itself, nor any one to nourish. So the whole substance of all creation is my will, as life, and my love, as nourishment. All other things are superficial, and as ornament. Therefore, heaven and earth are full of my love and of my will. There is not one point in which, like mighty wind, they do not pour themselves toward the creatures. And this always, always without ever ceasing. It is always in the act of pouring upon creatures, so much so that if the creature thinks, my divine will makes itself life of her intelligence, and my love, by nourishing it, unfolds it. If she looks, it makes itself life of her eye, and my love nourishes the light of her seeing. If she speaks, if she palpitates, if she operates, if she walks, my will makes itself life of the voice, my love nourishment of the word. My divine will makes itself life of the heart, my love nourishment of the heartbeat. In sum, there is not one thing that the creature might do in which my will does not run as life, and my love as nourishment. But what is not our sorrow in seeing that the creature does not recognize who it is that forms her life, and who nourishes all her acts? After this I continued my acts in the divine volition, and in my mind I was thinking to myself, what glory do I give to my God, and what good comes to me by repeating always the same acts? And my sweet Jesus told me, my daughter, one act alone does not form life, nor complete works in the creatures. The very divinity, in creation, wanted to act as repeater, for as many as 6 times, to form the whole machine of the universe. We could have made all created things with one single fiat, but no, we were pleased with repeating it, to take pleasure in seeing, coming out of us, with our creative strength, now the azure heavens, now the sun, and so with all other things created by us. And the last fiat was repeated over man as the fulfillment of the whole work of creation. And even though our fiat added no other fiat to create other things, yet it always acts as repeater, in order to maintain and preserve, as though in its breath of the fiat, all things enact, as if there and then it had created them. And oh, how necessary is repetition! By repeating, love grows, enjoyment is redoubled. One appreciates more what is repeated, and one feels the life of the act that is repeated. Now, by continuing your acts in my divine will, you come to form the life of my divine will in you. By repeating them, you raise it and nourish it. Do you think that by repeating them a few times, you could have formed its life in you? No, my daughter, at the most, you could have felt its balsamic air, its strength, its light, but could not have formed its life. It takes the acts that never cease to be able to say, I possess the life of the fiat. Does the same perhaps not happen to the natural life? One does not give it food or water only once, and puts it aside without giving it anything any more. But each day, if one wants to preserve life, it is necessary to nourish it. Otherwise, of its own it dies down. Therefore, continue your acts in my fiat, if you do not want its life to die down and not have its fulfillment in you. Fiat. July 24th, 1930. How the divine will is in continuous attitude in the divine being. Prodigy of when it operates in the creature. Enjoyment of God. My poor heart finds itself between two insurmountable powers, the divine fiat and the pain of the privation of my sweet Jesus, both of them powerful over my poor heart, such that while I feel all the bitterness of being without the one who formed all the happiness of my poor existence. And now, since I don't have him, it has converted for me into intense bitterness. The divine volition, subduing me, absorbs me into its divine will, so as to transmute it into itself. There is a footnote here that reads, "It" refers to my poor existence. So as to transmute my poor existence into itself. Now, while I was under tremendous oppressions, my sweet Jesus, giving me a surprise, told me, "My daughter, courage, do not fear. I am here with you." And the sign is that you feel in you the life of my Fiat. I am inseparable from it. Now you must know that our will is in continuous attitude in our divine being. Its motion never ceases. Its works are always in act. Therefore, it is always operating. But the marvelous surprises that occur when the creature enters into our will are enchanting and prodigious. As she enters, our volition encloses itself in the creature. And while it encloses itself to the point of filling her completely, since she cannot embrace it all or enclose it completely within herself, it overflows outside of her in such a way as to fill heaven and earth, in a way that it can be seen that the littleness of the creature encloses a divine will, which maintains in her its incessant motion and its works operating. There is nothing holier, greater, more beautiful, more prodigious than the operating of my volition in the littleness of the creature. While it operates, since she can neither enclose it nor embrace it all, because she is finite, and therefore does not have the capacity to enclose the immense and the infinite, yet she takes as much as she can, to the point of overflowing outside. And as it overflows, one can see the creature under a rain of light and of varied and rare beauties, inside and out, such that our divine being takes so much delight in it that we feel ourselves being enraptured, because we see the human littleness, by virtue of our Fiat that fills it, transmuted into the beauties of our divine qualities, which have such strength as to enrapture us, and make us enjoy in the creature our pure joys and our unspeakable happinesses. Now, you must know that every time the creature calls my will as life operating in her, and she plunges into it, to remain immersed in it, our enjoyment is so great that our whole being concurs, and we place in it such value, for as much value as our divine being contains. More so, since our divine Fiat has its first act of life in the act of the creature, she has been but the concurrent. Therefore, as our act, we place in it all the weight of our divine life. See, then, what it means to do an act in our will, what it means to multiply them, and the great loss for one who does not operate in it. Fiat. August 2nd, 1930. How all things are veiled. Only in heaven everything is unveiled. Necessary conditions and work which are needed in order to know the truths. I was thinking about the many truths that blessed Jesus had told me on his divine will, and which, only to obey, I had written on paper, and that some people in reading them not only are not taken by these truths, but it seems to me that they hold them as truths not to be taken into consideration. I felt in pain because of this, that while to me they seem like many suns, one more beautiful than the other, capable of illuminating the whole world, for others, instead, it seems that they have not even the virtue of warming it and giving it a little bit of light. So while I was thinking of this, my lovable Jesus, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, all things down here, both in the supernatural order and in the natural order, are all veiled. Only in heaven are they unveiled, because in the celestial fatherland there are no veils, but things can be seen as they are in themselves. So up there, the intellect does not need to work in order to comprehend them. Because of their own, they show themselves for what they are. And if there is any work to do in the blessed dwelling, if it can be called work at all, it is that of enjoying and delighting in the things which, unveiled, one sees. On the other hand, down here it is not so. Since the human nature is spirit and body, the veil of the body prevents the soul from seeing my truths. The sacraments and all other things are veiled. I myself, Word of the Father, had the veil of my humanity. All my words, my gospel, in the form of examples and of similes, and only those who drew near me to listen to me with faith in their hearts, with humility, and with the will to know the truths that I manifested to them in order to put them into practice, could comprehend me. By doing this, they tore the veils that hid my truths, and found the good that was in them. Through faith, through humility, and by wanting to know my truths. It was a work that they were doing. And with this work they would tear the veil and find my truths as they are in themselves. And therefore they remained bound to me and to the good that my truths contained. Others, who would not do this work, would touch the veil of my truths, not the fruit that was inside. Therefore they remained on an empty stomach. They could not understand anything, and turning their back to me, they departed from me. So are my truths, which with so much love I have manifested to you about my divine will, so that they may shine like unveiled suns as they are. Preachers must do their work, walk the way in order to touch them, which is faith. They must desire to want to know them, and pray, and humble their intellect in order to open it, so as to let the good and the life of my truths enter into them. If they do this, they will tear the veil, and will find them more than refulgent sun. Otherwise, they will remain blind, and I will repeat the saying of the gospel: you have eyes, and do not see, ears, and do not hear, tongue, and are mute. See, also in the natural order, all things are veiled. Fruits have the veil of the skin. Who enjoys the good of eating them? One who does the work of drawing near the tree, of picking it, of removing the skin that hides the fruit. This one enjoys, and makes the desired fruit his food. The fields are veiled by straws. Who takes the good that those straws hide? One who uncovers them of those straws has the good of taking the grains, in order to form the bread, to make of it his daily food. In sum, all things down here have the veil that covers them, to give to man the work and the will, the love to possess them and enjoy them. Now, my truths surpass natural things by far, and they present themselves to the creature like noble queens, veiled, in the act of giving themselves to them. But they want their work. They want them to draw near them by the steps of their will, in order to know them, possess them, and love them. Necessary conditions in order to tear the veil that hides them. Once the veil is torn, with their light of their own they make their way, giving themselves in possession to those who have searched for them. This is the reason for those who read the truths on my divine will, and show that they do not comprehend what they read. Even more, they are confused, because the true will of wanting to know them is lacking. It can be said that the work, in order to know them, is lacking, and without work nothing can be acquired, nor do they deserve such a great good. And I, with justice, deny to them that which I abundantly give to the humble, and those who yearn for the great good of the light of my truths. My daughter, how many truths of mine, suffocated by those who do not love to know them, and do not want to do their little work in order to possess them. I feel that they want to suffocate my very self, if they could. And I, in my sorrow, am forced to repeat what I said in the gospel, and I do it indeed. I take away from those who do not have, or who might have a little something of my goods, and I leave them in squalid misery, because not wanting them, and not loving them, these would hold them without esteeming them, and without fruit. And I will give more abundantly to those who have, because these will hold them as precious treasures, which will bear fruit more and more. Fiat. August 12th, 1930. How despondency doubles the weight of the pains. In what way Jesus visits us. How the first motive in God is love, and the divine will, the life. I am under the empire of the divine Fiat, which alone knows my deep wounds that keep becoming more bitter and multiplying in my poor soul. But all my hope is that the divine will alone may reign in the circumstances, alas, painful, of my existence down here, and which want to hasten my departure for the celestial fatherland. But while I was in the nightmare of most bitter pains, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, do not lose heart, because disheartenment calls for despondency, which doubles the weight of the pains. So much so that the poor creature, with this doubled weight, can just barely drag herself on the way that she must cover, while my will does not want you to drag yourself, but to fly within its interminable light. And besides, I myself am the sorrow, within which I make my little visits. Sorrow is the veil, but inside there is my person, which hidden within the veil of the sorrow visits the creature. I myself am the necessities, and hidden inside of them, I make her the most beautiful visits, to make myself help in the necessities that I dispose. It is not just by making myself seen that I visit the creatures, but in so many ways that it can be said that in each encounter, in each circumstance, or great or little things that happen to her, it is a visit that I dispose myself to make her, in order to give her what is needed. For one who lives in my divine will, then, my state in her being permanent, not only do I visit her, but I keep expanding the boundaries of my will. Then I continue to follow the acts of the supreme Fiat, to be able to follow, with my acts of love, the incessant and interminable love of my Creator. And my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, if you knew how sweet to me is your love, because I hear our echo in yours, our divine fibers, and as they raise your love into our own, it runs and runs so sweetly within our love, by saying to us, 'I want to love you as much and in the same way as you have loved me. For as many times as you have told me that you have loved me, so I too want to say it.' And our delight is so great, wanting the creature to act as the repeater of our love, that we expand so much the love of the creature, as to feel within all our love the sweet sound of her love. More so, since in everything we have done for the creatures, the first motive, the first act, has been love. And since our love, without our will, would have been like fire without light, and our will, without our love, would have been like light without heat, therefore what gave life to our love was the fiat. So, what moved us was love. But what gave and gives life to everything is our divine will. This is why one who wants to find true life must come into our will, in which one will find the fullness of our love, and the soul will acquire the prerogatives of our love, which are fecund love, love that rises, love that embraces everything, love that moves everything as love, love insuperable and without end, love that loves and conquers everything. Therefore, when I hear you run from one created thing to another, to place in them your I love you, and over each human act, to invest them with your I love you, I hear the sweet sound of your love within our own, and I love you more. Then he added with a most tender tone, My daughter, our love toward creatures is so great, that in each act she does, our love runs to love her, and our will to form the life of her act. So, in each thought that she forms in her mind, it is an act of love that we send to her, and our will offers itself to form the life of her thought. In each word that she pronounces, in each beat of her heart, in each step that she takes, there are as many acts of our love that run toward her, and our fiat offers itself to form the life of her word, the beating of her heart, the step of her feet. Therefore, the creature is kneaded with our love. She lives under the sweet storm of our love. Over her hangs our incessant love that loves her so much, and our fiat that runs rapidly to give life to each of her acts, be it even the smallest. Oh, if creatures knew how much we love them, how so inclined we are toward them, to love them always, always, as to let not even one thought of hers escape us, in which we do not send her our special and distinct love. Oh, how they would love us, and our love would not remain as though isolated, without the love of the creatures. Our love descends continuously toward the creatures, and their little love does not deign to rise toward their Creator. What sorrow, my daughter, to love and not to be loved. And this is the reason why, when I find a creature who loves me, I feel her love harmonizing with mine, and as my love descends toward her, so does her love ascend toward me. I abound so much for her, with graces, with favors, and with divine charisms, as to astonish heaven and earth. Fiat. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 28, Part 6. Fiat.